Let's review Star Wars Outlaws before it even comes out. Star Wars Outlaws was a game I was very excited for and realized I hadn't heard about it for quite some time, and then I did some googling. And what's that? It's coming out next month. Has Star Wars Outlaws been underhyped? When I first heard about Star Wars Outlaws, I was extremely excited about the game, and then I heard who was making it. But I suppose it could always be worse. But what is Star Wars Outlaws? A game without Jedi, it promises us the unique ability to
learn new blaster skills, upgrade your speeder, or become an unstoppable thief.
Assassin. I think he meant assassin. Even in the past few weeks, with a few lucky content creators getting their hands on the game, I still haven't heard much to do about it. But let's not jump to conclusions. With Star Wars Outlaws releasing about 1 month's time with one official story trailer, one official gameplay trailer at the time of recording, come with me aboard my hype train, where we try to predict what the reviews will be based on the official material that's already been released. Choo-choo! All aboard! That took so many recordings to get right. The story. Story is a fascinating thing to actually examine in kind of this hype review kind of sense. It is something that is both the least credible, because we know the least about it, sometimes maybe only a 5-minute snippet of a 40-hour plus long game, and yet something that is very telling of kind of how engaging a product will be long in advance. Because it's essentially a sales pitch. It's trying to convey a very condensed version of a story to engage the viewer or listener to want to purchase this product. And so does Star Wars Outlaws achieve that? Kind of, I guess. For Star Wars fans, Star Wars Outlaws takes place between The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, following the story of a new scoundrel, Kay Vess, as she plans a massive heist. And oh boy, does Vess's attire ever match the 1980s aesthetic that they were trying to emulate. Throughout the story trailer, it becomes clear that Vess is placed at odds against one of the most powerful crime bosses within the galaxy, and an opportunity presents itself to rob him for all he's worth. And this sounds like a fairly classic heist story, a lovable rogue and his animal companion, them against the world. Similar to another rogue in the Star Wars universe that maybe they tried to reboot but didn't quite go so well, so instead decided to make an entirely original character to be safe. Yet this story trailer also leaves me wanting for so much more. We don't really get much from Vess other than that she's trying to be a lovable rogue. And worse is, the line delivery just seems off. To a point where it even kind of draws me out of the story. Almost like I know I'm going to be skipping a lot of the cutscenes.
Actually, I'm here for you. I heard you're the best shot on the planet.
Oh. And while I am glad that Ubisoft has apparently received aid from Lucasfilm Games and other Ubisoft studios in this production, I am personally less excited to see Nikki Fay as lead writer on this project. Fay, to my knowledge, has only been lead writer on both Watch Dogs Legion and some Far Cry 6 DLCs. And that doesn't inspire much confidence in me, with Watch Dogs Legion being essentially a game with no main character. Which, even in itself, I didn't find told a very good story, but that is a far cry from Star Wars, which is so heavily character-driven that we'll see how this goes, really. For these reasons, I'm going to give the story a hype rating of 4. I think, honestly, that there might be some good story developments throughout the game, but it seems a bit far too scattered, with the character being pulled in different directions to actually be very compelling to me in the long run. The characters. Star Wars Outlaws only has one real character, Kay Vess, and her companion, Nix. And while there's only one 3-minute story trailer released to date, I can honestly say I am not very excited for these characters at all. First and foremost, I think honestly the biggest problem they run up against is that the lovable rogue character has a very hard time being the one and only character in a story. They are almost always supporting cast. There's a reason why Han Solo was not the lead of Star Wars. And secondly, that Kay Vess's line delivery is just not good, does not convey that lovable rogue vibe to me.
At the top, where it should be. Let's go, Nix. Oh, come on!
And I think this line delivery is intentional, to convey a character that is cool and aloof, but really just comes off as disinterested. And this is a huge problem in a game where Kay Vess is supposed to come off as a likable rogue, complete with comedic story beats.
In the right ship.
And the critical part, right, is that a likable rogue needs to be likable. Otherwise, they're not Han Solo. They're the kid that ran around your high school pretending to be Han Solo that nobody talked to. Being cool and aloof is a natural charm. It's not something you can force. But I might be being too harsh. There could be reasons for these kind of character traits and the way that the lines are delivered that are actually buried more deep into the character. And of course, this can also be corrected in final release. Does that make me more hyped about the game? Not at all. And as such, for our characters, I'll give her a 5 out of 10 for a perfect Mary Sue. And now for the gameplay. And oh boy, do I have a hard time talking about the gameplay, because honestly, I really want to like this game. I really want to like it so bad. It looked so cool originally. But why? Why they chose to highlight what they did in this highlight reel baffles me. Truly baffles me. So I'll continue the review with a little bit of a shit sandwich, where I guess the shit will be the buns this time. Right away, first bun, even the way that the gameplay teaser starts is problematic. Zooming out of a very low quality video game to demonstrate some Star Wars-like shooting on an arcade system that pulls out to show that K-Vess is playing it is just not a great start in showing off what a game is capable of. Like, I get it, they're probably doing the Grand Theft Auto thing of showing that you can, interact with all the arcade cabinets, but as the first thing you show, it's Star Wars. There's laser fights and space battles. Show me the space battles. And the line delivery. Even the first line, just every line throughout this entire trailer, not to harp on it, she seems so uninvested in everything she does.
Hey, new record.
Now let's hop into some positives. The maps actually seem pretty large. A unique skill tree development in which you have to seek out these underworld experts to grow your skills is also kind of interesting. I think there might be some problems that arise due to the linearity of potentially needing to unlock certain skills in a specific order, forcing you to visit planets in a specific order, but I think there's potential. And for those curious, even from what's already being shown, it's pretty clear that this game will not be true open world. You won't be able to explore all of a planet such as Tatooine, but rather will have to land and explore in an area around it. And to be honest, I think that's pretty fair, short of going the route of No Man's Sky and procedurally generating everything, which I don't think would work in a Star Wars environment. There's no real way to actually have these massive planets be fully populated, especially when, even within the series themselves, most planets are really confined to a single city. A reputation system is already highlighted as well, which I think is always a good thing. It allows for players to more personalize their experience, especially if the reputation systems will compete against each other. That has yet to be seen, but always good to be able to make each playthrough somewhat unique, helping both in customization for the player as well as replayability. A day-night cycle is also demonstrated, which I think is always a good thing in a game that allows you to go off and explore strange new worlds. Seeing how the day and night cycle affects the environment and the flora and fauna, always fun in a game that involves a lot of exploration. And that, unfortunately, is where my positives end. And following a casual 3-minute stroll through a cantina, Vess finally gets to what I've been waiting for: space combat.
This is K-Vess on board the Trailblazer. I'm coming to help.
Just take me back to that arcade cabinet, because really it's just a higher quality version of what we already saw before. The space combat is, for lack of a better word, lifeless, which is disappointing. Even Battlefront 2 had a perfectly fine space combat system. If you want to feel like an Empire TIE fighter, this might be the game for you. So let me paint you a word picture. And epic music plays as she misses almost every single shot. Forcing her to reload and recharge as the audience waits.
Turret activated, Tay.
Some abilities are demonstrated. She engages an auto turret, which helps her actually shoot the ship, which she's able to then put a few good shots into, causing it to explode. Which, once again, unenthusiastic Vess shouts,
One down.
"One down." We then see our hero fly aimlessly in circles for a few seconds before finally acquiring her new target, locking on with a homing missile, and blowing it up. And let's just say if that's the high-paced, action-packed dogfights we can expect throughout the game, I will be avoiding them at all costs. And as the gameplay trailer really wants to show off the inside of bars, another 3-minute segment in a 10-minute long video is dedicated to walking through cantinas. And since they are so focused on these visual aspects, I figured it's a good time to tackle it myself. The visuals. Right out of the gate, it is clear that both cinematics and gameplay graphics are two distinct things, and so I'll speak about them separately. The cinematic graphics are actually pretty impressive. The characters are very lifelike. You can tell that the majority of the story trailer is cinematic cutscenes. And that's fair, and you can even tell in this at certain points they actually start using real gameplay and immediately the quality is reduced. That said, the entirety of the story trailer looks fine. The water effects look great, the light effects look great, whether they're cinematic or gameplay, it looks fine. But throughout the actual gameplay trailer, cracks start to show. Particle effects really don't seem to be up to snuff at this point, honestly. Explosions look like really cheap PNGs that have been thrown up on the screen, and some other particle effects like the dust on Tatooine looks horrible, honestly. And yet other things look great. The lighting looks fine throughout the entire thing. Both the day and the night cycles have very pleasing light effects. Of course, I have to mention that the Star Wars lasers look exactly like Star Wars lasers, which is all I really wanted. And certainly the cantinas that they spent the majority of their gameplay trailer demonstrating are very visually satisfying. It's in the open world, though, that these cracks really start to show. Distant textures appear to have some difficulty rendering, and up-close textures, such as the rocks that Vess has to mantle on top of, are so off-putting that I found them even immersion-breaking in the trailer. But overall, I'm not disappointed, but I'm certainly not excited by what I've seen, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. The music and sound. For a Star Wars IP, the music, of course, is expected to be fantastic, as a series that has some of the most epic music of all time. And from what's shown, that seems to be true when it's playing. The sound design also should be applauded, as from the missiles, to the explosions, to the lasers, to the footsteps, all sounds very well, very good at bringing me into my immersion. But when the music's not playing, there's nothing. Space is ominously silent, and not in an immersive way. The music from Tatooine is unclear if it's a filler soundtrack or what, but there is some weird percussive music that is left with these odd silences that really highlight the background noise. Like, listen to this. What is that horrible, incessant chirping?
Do you sense anyone close?
God, it's Nyx. Nyx makes that noise, and that's the sound he makes when enemies are nearby. Which means Nyx might make that noise whenever there are enemies nearby during a game where the soundtrack is constantly pausing with silences. And that alone is a devastating sin. That needs to be remedied, like, now. And honestly, this is really disappointing to me. Star Wars is a game that's kind of built around ambiance and has these amazing soundtracks that just pull the viewer into the game, and I don't really feel like it was considered very well in the development of this game. So I'll give the music a 5 out of 10. The pieces that were actually keystone elements when the ship takes off, moving through lightspeed, all of which fantastic soundtracks. So I'll cross my fingers and hope that the other is a filler soundtrack and that some of the other issues, like Nyx's horrible chirping, will be fixed on final release. So let's get back to gameplay. We rejoin Vess as she dismounts her motorcycle like nobody has ever done in the history of mankind. And here's where it becomes clear that if space combat was slow, the main gameplay loop is even slower. And it's almost as if this is a reskin of, oh my god, Assassin. I think he meant Assassin. It's a reskin of Assassin's Creed, really. Although you don't have your handy-dandy wrist blade, you definitely can distract other people with your animal companion and take them out in one hit from behind. Restricted area flashes on the screen when you enter a building you're not supposed to be in. Lootable objects flash with this glowy white light thing. A lock-picking minigame is added, but it seems that you just push a single button, this thing spins around and little chimes go off. And at this point, Vess gets discovered, and so true combat starts, which immediately devolves into shoot 3 times and hide to reload and do it again. And again, I'm so surprised that this is what they wanted to highlight for combat. Somewhat thankfully, a dog-kicking QTE starts, and the whole thing kind of ends. Vess, overwhelmed and unable to fight off the few enemies, decides to just run. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen. And that concludes the gameplay footage. That concludes it. I can't even begin to describe that if these are the highlights that they wanted to demonstrate, I don't even want to know what the lowlights are. So for all of these reasons, I give the gameplay a scary 1 out of 10. Conclusions. With the story at 4, characters at 5, visuals at 6, sound design at 5, and the gameplay at a solid 1 out of 10, this gives us an average of about 4 out of 10 for Star Wars Outlaws, barely chugging along down the hype tracks. And again, I want to get this out of the way right up front. This is based solely on the official gameplay material that the company has put out at this time. These opinions are not based at all based on the backlash at Ubisoft for certain remarks they've made about Play Pass, nor is it about how woke Disney is ruining Star Wars, and is based entirely upon the official material that they've put out themselves. And even if I did share some of these sentiments, it is irrelevant to the product that I'm reviewing. Separate the art from the artist and all that. I also realized that making a video game about such a beloved franchise such as Star Wars is a very tall order for anybody. And certainly over the years we have seen many a flop in this regard. And while Ubisoft is a controversial choice to make this game, I again think it could have been much worse. But this game seems particularly detached. Previous Star Wars titles at least had hype, they seemed fun. But honestly, after watching this, I don't really know who this is made for. Other than possibly Assassin's Creed fans, and Disney's already made so many Star Wars spin-offs that the last thing I want to see in my future is Star Wars Outlaws Sisterhood. And if you're still around, it would actually mean the world if you could drop a like, leave a comment to get a conversation going, and maybe even share this with a friend. It helps keep the channel going and helps keep my motivation high to actually keep producing content for you guys. And as anyone who's a fan of my channel knows, I'm not all about giving criticism, so here's a few ways that I think the game could be improved based on what we've already seen. I definitely think space combat needs to be fleshed out further, and hopefully another gameplay trailer's released that shows this. Possibly even with its own skill or tech trees. I'd also like to see further care given to sound design. Reduce or remove Nyx's horrible chirping and potentially replace it with something less obtrusive. And that weird soundtrack of just percussive instruments with silence would be better replaced for something more planet-specific. Potentially a planet-specific dynamic soundtrack that would decrease certain instruments' volume during stealth sections or increase them during combat. And lastly, I'm also hoping for a little bit of change in the weapon design or combat of the game. As it stands, it appears to be pretty Mass Effect-y, but with even shorter cooldowns and horrible reload times. Because the stealth gameplay seems to be rather clunky, and the non-stealth gameplay appears to be very slow. The whole thing just seems to be a sluggish snail pace of a game. Lastly, recall that this is just my opinion of an unfinished product, and my intent is to wholly update these scores and to compare them as to what the actual final review scores were to see how good I did at kind of guessing where these went. Don't take my word on it, go out, buy the game yourself if you can't afford it, and if not, borrow it from a friend. Develop your own opinions and let me know what you thought of it down below. And that was my first episode of Hype Train. Hope you guys enjoyed, let me know if you want more of these, and I'll see you next time. Bye!